thing for me is fun because, as I said in the first segment with Marion and with George Catavlis, these are Frank Burke, Jim Bonk, guys that came through in the clutch for the Boilermakers. Nobody probably more in the history of Purdue football than Frank Burke. Now I don't know if the ball, if the punch that you blocked that year, if you just happened the ball laid on the end of the foot and you just pounced on it, but you made huge plays. You still think about those a lot in terms of the Michigan one is the one I always think about, the fact that you blocked the kick late in the game, gave Purdue a 1-point win at the Big House.
I still have that football in my office.
Okay, that answers the question.
And at the time when I blocked that punt, I said it was for my boys.
Yeah.
And no, what had happened is that I don't recall anybody blocking me, and I forget Sims' first name, but he was a punter in Michigan. And I broke through, and it hit with such force off my hand, it went straight up in the air.
Yeah.
And as I was getting up off the ground, I'm looking at everybody, and they're looking up in the air. And I just leaped up, grabbed the football, and went about 4 or 5 yards into the end zone.
You're in the end zone. And the backstory on Frank Burke, which makes it really even more amazing. He was a Vietnam vet. You were the people called you, at least from my perspective, called you the grandpa of the team because you were 27 when you were playing, or how old was it?
Well, I started out at 25.
25.
25. But I need to correct you. I was not a Vietnam.
Okay.
I was not.
But you were in the service.
I was in the service.
Okay, gotcha.
In fact, I was a jock in the service.
Okay.
I played Army football, and I ran track in the Army. So.
Yeah, and a great tribute to the fact that you came back. Did you start school before you went into the service, or did you end in the service and then come to Purdue?
No, I'll tell you what. I graduated in '58, and I went to work with my dad at Snyder Tank, which made fuel tanks for tractor trailers. And we were hit by the steel strike in '59. Uh-huh. And in '60, we went from about 2,500 employees down to probably about 750, and I was laid off. And next thing I know, in probably right around the end of September, first part of October, Uncle Sam grabbed me and said, "Gradians, friends and neighbors, have selected you to represent them in the military." And I said to myself many times, "I'd like to find out who they are." I didn't. But I went in the military, and it was a great time. Then I was extended 6 months for the Cuban crisis, 6 months for the Berlin crisis. So I spent 32 months overseas, and I tell everybody, I said, if it wasn't for the fact that I was extended, I would never met my wife. Yeah. Because in '63, February '63, I met my wife. And Mother and Dad sponsored her to come over, and then we were married in September '64.
Number 68. We know number 74 because you can see that Jim Bonk is the guy that.
Should I give him the look here to the flash?
As
that's enough.
Offensive lineman. But also, Jim, one thing that Jim has done for 50 years is played a big part of keeping this group together, and I think that's a tribute to you, just in terms of how important this is. This is a big weekend, just because these are your brothers.
They are.
The opportunity to be here.
And it's been great, a great pleasure to be here and see this kind of a turnout. We've done this in the past, and of course you've helped out with some of your efforts at the Black and Gold. So really, it's been and I've been involved with the university at the other levels with the Krannert School, which I graduated and got my master's degree from as well. When I was a grad assistant with this gentleman, we had 2 more years together as grad assistants back in the day when freshmen were not eligible. So we came back. I had my try with the 49ers and came back after I got injured again. So I went to grad school, and then of course I went into a business career afterwards. And but I stayed involved with Purdue also on the alumni board of directors, which was another pleasurable thing to do. It gave me a different insight into the university that we love so much. So
playing offensive line for an offensive line guy like Jack Mullenkoff, right? I believe that's right. He wasn't kind of that type of person, and demanding? Was it what you expected when you were a young person coming here? You were a fun guy, so my guess is that the coaches might have hollered at you from time to time, but I don't know. What was it like to play for Jack?
One of the things that all of us from this era remember was that Jack was a guy who expected you to be at your best and to be disciplined, because I think his biggest message to all of us were, you're here to play football, but you're here to get your grades, to get your education, because your bigger future is ahead of you here outside of Purdue University. So, but as back in those days, linemen didn't get a lot of recognition, except if you let a guy through.
Yeah.
And as Jack would say, well, you kept the grass stain off of Greasy's ass. So that was sort of the kind of a compliment in a backhanded way. But and also, if we minimize the kind of penalties, and back, I don't remember penalties back in those days, but they were rare in between. But an offensive lineman, we had a job to do, and we had to do it as a team and a unit. And I think that's part of what you do when you get into business or into life in general. So you learn a lot of great lessons here.
Frank, you had an opportunity to play with some other very talented players, a sophomore and Chuck Kyle that in the 66. In your last season of eligibility was 60. You both were 67?
77, yes.
Yeah, and won a Big Ten championship in your senior year, if my memory is right. But look at, Rose Bowl or Big Ten championship. Rose Bowl is still the best experience you could ever have, you think?
By far, I would have to say the Rose Bowl stood out to me because my mother and dad were able to be in the stands. And my dad supported me. I mean, I can remember my dad would work hard, finish early so he could come to my games when I played football in high school, when I ran track in high school. He was always in the stands supporting me. And whenever Dad's day came around, he was always there. And he was very, very supportive. And his chest popped out a few times to me, especially when he got back home and he'd talk about his son. So, but no, I look back on that experience of being in the Rose Bowl. The thing that really stands out is that when my brothers and sisters, after watching a game, because if you remember correctly, Ellen, I went off sides. And I got chewed out royally by Jack Mullenkoff on the sideline, and they said, "You were on national television getting chewed out." But the other thing, it was a close game, and in fact, George Catawbalis, I believe, no, that was in the Michigan game that he intercepted.
No, he did in the Rose Bowl.
In the Rose Bowl,
He intercepted the two-point conversion.
The two-point conversion. But a lot of people don't realize that I blocked a field goal in that also. And so it was important. It was not only important, but it was a memory that my wife was out there with me, and it's something that I was able to share with my two boys growing up. And
what was the key to blocking kicks, though? Because you blocked. I mean, was it just being able to be at the right place at the right time, being able to look at tendencies of kickers, or I mean, what did you do? Was it more art than science, or more science than art for you?
Ellen, to be honest with you right now, the key was not going off sides.
Yeah,
that's what
there you go.
Not going off sides. But I think what honed me in on being able to block kicks was my military ball. My military ball, because believe me, everyone was for themselves. There was no team unity such as what we had in the 4 years, even as freshmen. I mean, we had the unity that we had within that team was just special. And I think that's what really helped me to hone my, because I didn't want to get blocked. That was a goal of in my head, that don't let anybody stop you, don't let anybody block you. And it was just a matter of maneuvering around people. If you had to go over them, around them, under them, but I don't know. I can't recall the number of times I blocked the kicks and
5 or 6. It's
a
very big number.
Like that.
I mean, it's very important.
Yeah.
You got to protect two of the greats in not only in Purdue history, but in college football history, obviously, with Bob Greasy and Mike Phipps.
Right.
Different personalities those guys were, but what were the differences between them in terms of when they came in the huddle? Mike was obviously just a sophomore in 67, but still very, very highly accomplished guys. How were they different?
Well, each one had different physical characteristics. They both had great skills, as you can appreciate. Both ended up being All-Americans and both Heisman runner-ups, so that's pretty special. When you're blocking for guys like that, it makes your job a little easier because they're doing their job so well. But Bob was what I call a quiet leader, and Mike was very quiet. Actually, both of those guys were pretty quiet guys in their own rights within how they led the team. And again, Bob was, I think, somebody who was out there and you respected what he did. And again, I think there's a lot of similarities between the two. Mike was a different person because of his physical characteristics. He was bigger and had different capabilities that Bob did, but they both, I think, had somewhat similar personalities. They both were fairly quiet, but very confident, and I think that's what's spread among the team as well.
Even on the other side of the ball, Frank, I mean, what did you notice about them in terms of their leadership? I mean, anything else to add to that in terms of the difference between the two?
Well, there's no doubt at all that what Jim says, that, you know what, they really, I didn't notice that much of a difference in the ability to lead as much as I did. They had different physical
Skill
techniques.
sets, yeah.
But, you know, so many times, you know, and I think it was because of my age and what I've learned through the years playing ball, Army ball, is that, you know what, it doesn't take one person, it takes 11 people.
Yeah.
It takes 11 people out there on that football field to come together, to unify, and to get the job done. And that's what happened. That's what happened during those years for us.
Well, it was 11 people on offense, 11 people on defense, and then the other guys are behind the scenes. I think we can't forget our teammates who...
You had some depth, too. You had guys
that was the other thing we did. We had plenty of depth, and those guys gave us lots of support, and they also were there from a competitive standpoint, because that's, I think, what makes the team great, is when you got the knowledge that if something happens to you or you're being challenged to do your best, because that's what the depth brings. But we, as a team, from the guys who were, you know, not as high on the list of where they were on the depth charts, the guys that were on the first team, anybody could have stepped in, I think, in many cases. And in fact, I think in the Rose Bowl year, I mean, we had a guy like Dick Marvel stepped up and did a fabulous job when Pat Conley got hurt, and so those are all important players of this team. It's not just, you know, one guy, one position. So.
One legend that's here that has been on our show several times, we gave him the day off, and this is our last question. We're running a little bit over. We appreciate everybody along the line sticking with us. But how good was Leroy Keys? Tell me that, because you watch him on film, and I watched him play. I was in the second grade. I had no appreciation. But how good was he? Even in practice, I mean, how great a player was he? Frank, I'll start with you. Did you ever have to chase him down?
Well, Leroy Keys could stop on a dime and give you 9-cent change.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so quick. He was so quick, and he had the capability of doing everything.
Yeah.
And when I look at Bob Greasy, I say, look at the undefeated season with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
That speaks for it all. That's, you know, that is what proves if you are sincere or not about the game. But I think what helped me, and I can't speak for Jim, but when we worked as graduate assistants, that gave me a better insight of what we were working with, with these young men on, you know what, it worked. It's working. It's working. Continue what is working. But we had some great players. We had some great players that, when we look at Little Butterball Sale Champy, I mean, guard. I mean, to watch him pull out of that guard position, go around the end and take somebody out. I mean, of course, they probably couldn't find him or see him. But other than that,
anyway,
your memories of Leroy, just in terms of how great.
Leroy, as an offensive lineman, I think what you appreciate about a guy like Leroy is, besides his defensive skills, when he played both ways, actually, which is a tremendous situation in itself. For an offensive lineman, actually, it made your job easier. It sounds sort of strange, but when a guy like him, or even Perry Williams, God bless him, who was a great running back as well, or he was our fullback. But when you got a guy like Leroy carrying the ball, it does make your job, I won't say easier, but boy, it brings that confidence out that you're going to get the job done and give him enough room to get, because he can hit the line like that and he's gone and pick up the yardage, and that kind of talent is rare.
Yeah, your senior year, he led the nation in scoring, a first-team All-American. How many times do you remember blocking and then looking forward and seeing number 23 running for a touchdown?
I like to look at the back of his pants, to be honest with you. We ran a play called 21 and 22 toss. I was a left offensive tackle, and so on the left side it would have been the 21 toss, the right side is 20. And, you know, when they called that number, if I was on the front side, you had to make that hook block and make sure you sealed off that tackle or end. And if you're on the back side, you better get your butt downfield, because he could break those. No, he had over 9-yard average rushing, which is, I think, today still one of the leading in the record books today for rushing average. So that's pretty fantastic in itself.
Absolutely fantastic. Well,
It
guys,
speaks for itself.
yeah, it does, as well as do your accomplishments. Thank you so much for your time.
Alan, thank you.
I hope you have a
Appreciate it.
great rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
I know
Appreciate it. Yeah.
We all would hope for a Purdue victory tomorrow.
we look for it.
and we'll see what happens from that standpoint. A lot of people to thank. I want to thank Gordon and Paul sitting in here and all the effort they've given to us. and we promise not to take him on the road at least for another couple of weeks. I usually tell Gordon, give him 2 or 3 days notice, and he works fine. But also to Cammie back at the station as well, and Stacy and Kyle, and of course Orlando White and the good folks at Bruno's here. We appreciate it. This is a great tradition. This is where reunions belong. At a place like this, a lot of fun to come down here and enjoy it, and we did that. And also to our sponsors, of course, Basham Rental, Triple X, a great Purdue tradition, Hilton Garden Inn, and State Farm agent Trent Johnson. If you missed part of this show, you can watch it as many times as you like on the internet. It's there, and we'll look forward to archiving it here shortly for you. We'll be back next week. We're going to talk a little baseball in between football next year. Maybe we're talking about being Cubs fans, and we're going to be interested to see if the Cubs they still should be in the playoffs by this time next week. We're going to be interested to see how that run goes, and we'll be talking to Purdue's baseball staff as well. We'll see you next week on Gold and Black Live.
Take care.
Yeah,
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, what a thrill. See you again.
Well, good seeing you. Always
it's
a
always
pleasure.
good to see you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fun. So.